Hey, John here. Today you're going to learn about local marketing. You're going to look about how to make better decisions for your future self. Now, just so you know what's going on, this is one of our greatest hits episodes. I'm actually on vacation when we're supposed to be recording this, and so we decided to be kind of a fun thing to be able to bring back some episodes that we thought are really awesome that were recorded or published a long time ago, in the thought that you might have missed them. So, this episode is back from December 2022, and it is the episode where I feel like we started to kind of find a flow with this podcast, and at the end, I think it's also just really, really funny. Anyway, I hope that you love it. Hope that you have a good day. I'll be back at the end to recommend another episode for you. Thanks.
Well, I guess you're not going to start, John.
What?
For all the listeners out there, we were watching the timer time down to the beginning of this podcast. As it got to 5, counting backwards to 1, I gently said, Jonathan, are you going to start? And as soon as the podcast got to 0 and we were live, you heard him say "what" on the air. And that's just how smooth we are here on the Goodman Show. That's how we roll, son. It's what we like to do here.
So I was walking out of my podcast studio, which is the room that I work in that I turn on a mic whenever we go to the podcast. I was walking out of my podcast studio a couple of weeks ago, and some guy yells across the street and says hello. And this guy, I see he has like a van, and on the van it says Bolton Foods. Mm-hmm. But I didn't know anything about it. I was like, whatever. Like, this guy's like selling me something, but it's a nice day. So I went and chatted with him, and he was like super, super nice. And he says, this guy says, hey, we're just doing a delivery in the area. So I thought whenever we do this, I thought I'd knock on doors and just, say hi to whoever's around and see if you're interested. What we do is we sell really good, super, super high quality meats and stuff like that. I ended up buying $500 worth of meat from this guy.
That's awesome.
I bought really, really nice steaks. I bought sushi grade tuna and salmon because we like making sushi at home. And immediately afterwards, I thought to myself, man, think about what just happened. This guy may or may not have actually been doing a delivery in the area. Mm-hmm. First off, I have no clue whether he was. But even if he was, he's delivering this to the area. Somebody else bought it. And then he says, well, if I'm going to be in that area anyway, I may as well just go, and him and his partner will just quite literally just knocking on every door on the street and just saying, hey, we're from Bolton Foods. We do, they have their little shtick or whatever it is. We sell super, super high quality meats. They're all flash frozen, so you can store them. If you have a minute, love to show you what we got, right? And I would have never in a million years responded to any advertisement, to any marketing. This guy could have been at a street fair. This guy could have served me ads on Instagram. This guy could have handed out flyers anywhere. I would have thrown that shit right in the garbage. But because he was a real human who waved and said hello and smiled at me, I bought $500 worth of meat from this guy. And I'm sure other people did too. And I have seen him in the weeks that followed twice more. And whenever I see him, we say, he's like, how's the steak? I'm like, bro, that steak was amazing. Because they are it's legit good. This goes back into everything that we keep saying. Like, if the quality of your product is shit, there's not much that you can do. But if the quality of your product is good, you have a responsibility to sell that product. And oftentimes the best way to sell that product is just to speak to a human being. And this guy now, every time that I see him, oh, hey, it was good. We saw one of our neighbors outside, and they were just like, oh, it's good. We're like, yeah, dude, the steaks are good. And then our neighbors bought meat from this guy. And next time that I need meat, which is going to be a while because I bought a lot of meat, next time that I need meat, and I'm kind of the only one who eats meat really in my family that much anymore. And I don't even eat a ton because Allison doesn't have as much. Ever since her cancer last year, she decided to really, so she'll have a small sliver of steak or whatever it is when I'm having one, but just doesn't have as much, and it feels better when she doesn't. And so we don't eat as much, so we'll go through it slower. But next time that we need it, I'm 100% going to buy it from him if he shows up again. Or if we're getting low. And all that I could think about was how many more people need to operate like Bolton Foods and less like Jimmy, the pretend fitness influencer. if you're training a client or if you're in between clients, all you need to do is pick any neighborhood anywhere where you feel like people have money. Because by the way, people are at home working now, and knock on their door and say, hey, what's going on? I'm Amber. Look, I was actually just training one of your clients down the street. I'm in between sessions right now. Figured I'd say hi. Not sure if anybody's interested in any fitness or anything like that. But, if you have time, like, I'd be happy to take you through like a 15, 20-minute stretch, or whatever. If not, like, we can schedule another time to come back. How many times do you think you would need to do that for half a day to fill a clientele?
Let me ask you this. I've got a question, and it's about the story, but not the end of the story. Say I don't eat a lot of sushi. How would one describe to me sushi grade tuna? Because that confused me a little. I'm not gonna lie. Is it already sliced into? Because tuna sushi is like
it's just
really
the quality.
thin,
It's just the quality in
high quality.
It's the quality in the processing of it. It has to be, in order for it to be certified sushi grade, it has to be like basically stored and shipped. And so it depends on where it's coming from in the world. So for example, when I lived in Hawaii, Hawaii is the only state in the United States where they're allowed to sell sushi grade at the regular grocery store. Because it basically, they just like pull it out of the ocean and put it in. And so Allison and I would actually make our own sushi 3 or 4 nights a week. We just go to the grocery store, we get fish, or we just had friends who go spearfishing, right? And they just like pull out a fish out of the ocean, and we'd make it. But most of it, if you live in like a landlocked, like away from the ocean place, like we do, salmon is all coming from the Atlantic. Most of the salmon is coming from like Norway or something. Tuna is often coming from the Pacific. And so it's coming from far away. So sushi grade has to do with basically how it's stored and shipped. And then the quality of the actual fish itself. And most of what you get, there's a butcher for meat. For fish, it's called a fishmonger.
It's so badass sounding.
It's so badass. And so a butcher for fish is called a fishmonger. It's funny because I always like default to Spanish with this stuff. I'm like, oh, pescadario, right? But it's like a fishmonger. And so there are fishmongers in Toronto that sell sushi grade fish. Most of them only do tuna and salmon. Some of them will bring in other types of fish, but most places you'd be pretty hard pressed to get anything sushi grade that's not that. But yeah, when we lived in Hawaii, I mean, that was like a lot of what we ate. We just make our own sushi. You get, and we don't do like the whole wrapping thing. Allison does sometimes. We don't do like the whole wrapping thing with rolls. We just do hand rolls. You get like a seaweed thing from, I mean, we even get the Costco ones. You get like a seaweed thing from Costco.
Right.
And you just make the sushi rice is kind of the whole science of it.
Right. Right.
And so I think it's rice vinegar. I might be wrong, but you basically have to make sushi grade rice, which is like sticky rice, and you lay it out on a pan really flat.
Right.
And it has to sit there for like a day. And so that's the hardest thing about sushi is you kind of have to do it in advance, and you put a little bit of rice vinegar on top of it, not too much or it tastes kind of tangy. And then you take the rice and the fish and the avocado and whatever else you want to put in there, and just wrap it.
That's how Black grandmothers do their collard greens for Thanksgiving. You have to do it a day early. Yeah. Like if you're cooking your greens on Thanksgiving Day, your greens ain't shit. Like they're whack. I got a follow-up question about the sushi, Jonathan. Follow-up question. And I want to tie this into business. Say if I changed my title on Instagram to sushi grade trainer, what percentage can I raise my prices? What do you think? That's a 40% hike for a sushi grade personal trainer? Is there such a thing?
So there's two schools of thought behind names like that. Seth Godin, legendary marketing guy, Seth Godin, will actually say, I mean, I'm going to put words in his mouth, but that's fine. I mean, I'm sure he listens to this podcast. But
right, he's listening now, undoubtedly.
He's going to send me an email, and he's going to be like, John, yeah, buddy,
No. Is this a Will Smith moment?
Heard what you said on the Goodman Show. Yeah, right. Yeah, keep my wife's name out of your mouth. Flat. I feel like what he says. So what Seth Godin says is you actually want to choose a name that has a story behind it, but isn't immediately obvious. So that when like he talks about this with the titles of his book, so that way like linchpin or purple cow, names of two of his books. And that way, if it's sitting on the desk or something like that, somebody else says, oh, what's that? And it forces the person to explain and basically sell his book for him to somebody else. The problem, of course, with that is that requires somebody to already own the book, have read the book and like the book, and then share it, which oftentimes, with our businesses, that's harder to do. And we're not in other people's houses as much anymore because of the COVID. And people are not as open to being. It's funny how skittish people are of crossing that threshold into the house. Even our neighbors, we're like, yeah, just come over. The kid's like, can I come? Yeah, just come inside. And our neighbor's like, is that okay? Yeah, it's like we're hanging out on our driveway. It's 1 foot farther to come into the house, So that's one. But the other bit about the naming is and so your sushi grade trainer kind of plays into that, is what I'm saying, is that if you do that, it actually has a decent story that I think you could tell around it.
Right.
But it forces you to tell that story. And I think a trainer, if they wanted that to be their thing, could wrap that into a story and tell it, but they would be forced to tell that story and make that story a part of all the content and all the stuff that they do and their branding and stuff like that, which I don't think is bad, but it's probably not something that a lot of
customer education, which takes time and money to do.
Oh yeah,
it's not bad.
Well, and skill.
And skill.
And so, as we know, I go with overtly obvious names that take absolutely no creativity whatsoever. And, Quick Coach, Online Trainer Academy, The Goodman Show. You have no idea how many names I thought of that were way more creative for this podcast. And I was like, The Goodman Show, we're good. We're good.
That's good enough, John. I was shocked by the Online Trainer Show. Back when we were doing that, I was just, nobody took that handle, nobody took that domain. That was so amazing to me. And for the listeners out there that aren't familiar with it, I'm saying that because at the time we were probably at the height of online training.
Right.
This is pandemic-ish era, and everybody and their grandmother was online training or teaching online training. It was just amazing to me when John said it's going to be called the Online Trainer Show. I was like, how can you do that? There's probably 60 of them. He was like, no, there's no other show.
Here's the thing. Have you ever been to any of the national parks in the United States?
Yeah. I used to live in the D.C. area, which is Washington, D.C. in of itself is a national park.
I've been with some black people and asked them to go on hikes, and the response is always, nah, bro, black people don't hike.
No, not that national park, Jonathan. No, not absolutely.
Okay.
Can I? Because
I was on a boat. I was on a boat one time with a black person, and he looked at me. And he's like, "Yo, this is the first boat I've been on. Black people don't boat."
It's cruise ship or nothing, Jonathan. It's not a genre of activity that the culture really latches on to very easily.
What was who's Trevor Noah? I remember him talking about when his rich white friends invited him to go camping one time.
Trevor Noah's a legend, first of all.
He's like, you know how hard we worked to not have to camp? he's like, I'm not going back to that shit.
Historically, there's been a lot of outside sleeping and eating through the centuries, Jonathan. It's not something that we really look to for entertainment value. It's far more entertaining to be inside the house with a television. But you go ahead.
Okay,
national parks. Have I been to a national park?
You go to any of the national parks. Alice and I one time did a 48-day road trip. We hit 16 national parks and monuments.
Sheesh.
And we did a ton of hiking and trekking. And what jumped out at me in every single one of them, we went to some of the lesser known ones, but we went to some of the major national parks, like Yosemite, for example. And you get there, and inevitably there's the parking lot that you arrive into. And in the parking lot, there's the one path to the one main hike off of the parking lot that's usually a 10 or 15 minute, really comfortable walk. And that thing is packed. Everybody's taking pictures. And then you walk off of that path or on a different path. That's just like 5 minutes off of the beaten path. And you got the whole thing to yourself.
Right. Nobody's there.
It's the same with podcasts. It's the same with business. It's the same with marketing. All you have to do is take one step farther than everybody else, and you've got the whole market to yourself. This is why the podcast name was open. Podcasts are not difficult to start, but they're a tiny bit of extra work, right? That is immediately catapults you into uncommon territory.
Right.
It does not, the bar is set so low to stand out. All you have to do is do something that is a little bit uncomfortable, that is a little bit unfamiliar. And all of a sudden you're in a league of your own.
You know what's interesting about that? Someone messaged me, DM me this morning, actually, about the other podcast. Said they followed me and I did what Jonathan does. Hey, thanks so much for following. Happy to have you here. I'm curious, how the heck did you even find me in my little tiny corner of the internet? She was like, oh, I listened to the online trainer show. I was like, that crap's still on? I thought they pulled that down. Like,
no, it's still on.
But seriously, a lady this morning, she said, oh, I've learned so much from that show. It's hilarious. And we did a good amount of those shows. I mean, that was way past average.
Episodes.
Yeah. What was it? Was it 130 episodes?
Over 130.
130. Yeah, I mean, we did it for well over a year, right?
Mm-hmm. What's the average, John? You told us what like the average amount of podcasts. Was it under 20, and people sort of tap out? I
mean, it depends, right? It's the same type of thing where you kind of have to look at the stats two different ways. For example, if you look at the average from when people become a certified personal trainer, like what's the average like lifespan of a personal training career? Well, if you set the low bar at somebody just becomes certified, it's 2 months. But if you set the bar at 5 clients, like if somebody's gotten 5 clients, it jumps up to 2 years. Mm-hmm. And so it's the same type of idea with podcasts. I don't remember what the stats are, but the average is something like 3 episodes.
Right. It ain't 130. I know that.
But it's not 130. I think it's like 15, 20, like no matter where you do it. Like basically if somebody has more than 10 or 15 episodes, like they're bucking the trend. So here's how I respond. So one of the things that I do, because it's really hard to know what to say yes or to say no to often. And I want to say yes, I want to participate in a lot of things. And I'm getting invited to a lot of podcasts, and I can't like I just don't have the time or the effort or the desire to actually assess whether it makes sense for me to go on each one. And I don't want to let my emotions in the moment, like I don't want to let current John make decisions for future John, because future John fucking hates current John. And so
that all the time.
Yeah, and so what I will often do is I'll set these arbitrary rules, but rules that help current John make better decisions for future John based off of what I know that and so my rule for podcasts is I will appear on any podcast that you have, regardless of the audience size, whatever it is, as long as you have done a minimum of 100 episodes. And the reason for that is, if you've done 100 episodes of a podcast, you are self-selected to be a certain type of person who follows through on shit. Mm-hmm. I want to get to know you because you're immediately the top 1%. Right. You're probably not going to be complete shit. Like if you're doing an interview and you've done 100 interviews, like it'd be pretty hard to be a really bad interviewer.
Right.
And I don't even care if you have an audience or not, because you are now the type of person that I want to get to know. And it's also a really easy way for me to say no to the amount of people who are like, hey, I just started a podcast. I want you to be the first episode. It's like, I don't want to be your first episode. Yeah. You have no audience. You're not good at this. And you're trying to get me to like promote your show that's probably not going to be that good and not a good representation of me because you're not good at doing the show. And then I'm going to feel bad for not doing it. And then you're going to think I'm an asshole for not promoting your show. And so this is a really good way for me to just say, I would love to do your podcast. Please message me after you've done 100 episodes. And I am an immediate yes.
You know what this reminds me of, John? You do podcasts like you choose barbers. Like you want the guy with the golden. You got the golden clippers. I'll sit down in that seat, buddy. But you're saying, hey, I'm doing my first haircut today, John. Would you like to be the first client?
How do you make
Nope.
decisions? How do you make
Nope.
decisions on this stuff? There's too many unknowns. Like, how do you possibly figure out all of these disciplines where you have, I mean, with a barber, it's like, you're not going to know that they're shit until it's too late.
Yeah.
Right?
Unless they got a golden throne.
So how do you possibly know? Well, you can go by recommendations, referrals, fine, maybe,
Right.
but you can also go by how serious. What are there any indications that this person takes what they do seriously? Because odds are, if they take it seriously, they're
Right.
not going to be shit. Now, I have no way to know whether you're going to be phenomenal or not. The reality of it is, I'm a 5'4" Jewish guy who needs his hair cut. Like, I don't need a phenomenal barber, right? I need somebody who's like not a shitty barber. And so all that I'm doing is trying to figure out a way to quickly and effectively make a decision of what barber to go to based off of, I need this person to be not shit at being a barber.
Right.
And how can I make that as quick as possible? Because I don't want to actually be thinking about choosing a barber. I have more important things to think about. So, yeah, I mean, I walked by all the barber shops in our neighborhood when we moved in, and one of them, I looked in the window, and he had a golden chair. Not real gold. And he had a suitcase that was like golden equipment. And I was like, hell yeah, I'm going with that guy. Like, I don't know whether he's good, but like, he's got some skin in the game. He clearly takes some pride in what he does.
Yes.
It's like a trainer, you know, it's like a trainer who sends spreadsheets with like Google Sheets. It's like, take pride in what you do. If you are serious about what you do, you take pride at what you do. If a client's paying you for it, they deserve you to send their program professionally. That's why I designed Quick Coach is because trainers should take pride in their programs. And a program is not just about the sets and the reps. It's about the trappings of the program. How somebody receives that program impacts their results just as much as what's actually in the program, because if they believe that that's the right thing for them, and if they believe that the person sending it is an expert, the odds that they'll do it go up. The odds that they'll adhere and believe in the process go up, and your success as a coach will increase.
Yes.
These are all of the soft skills, and this is why you need to register for Quick Coach at quickcoach.fit right now. Claim your free account, www.quickcoach.fit, another one of these boring names, and take pride in what you do. Like, Google Sheets is not something you should be proud of. Sending your clients their programs, not just because it's a shitty experience for them to receive it, but there's no skin in the game for you. Why would anybody trust you based off of that versus anybody else? It's the same idea of choosing a barber. It's the same idea for anything else. Okay, I want to talk to you about.
Should we
about
circle
the
back?
Philippines.
Should we circle back? Because we didn't really finish the conversation around going door to door. You asked a question of how many afternoons do you think it would take you to fill up your client roster? So one thing that I was thinking of is set expectations around. If you do that, you're not going to get a client every door you walk into, but you start relationships, and that should be the goal, not to necessarily land clients, but to build relationships. And if you're like me, who like gets hives at the thought of knocking on someone's door, it's a necessary evil, and like, just have a plan in place of what you're going to say, but it's worth doing, and it's worth getting the hives, and you will get over it.
You gotta, I mean, whether it is physically whether it's physically choosing a neighborhood and knocking on doors, or whether it's metaphorically pounding the pavement. It's a very important thing to do. I mean, I pound the pavement still to this day on Instagram. I have a rule where I have a minimum of 10 people that I speak to and have an actual conversation with every single day on Instagram. These are not influencers. These are like good people doing good shit. Like, I'll try to like catch somebody in the act of like putting out a good piece of content. And it might be somebody who I don't know. It might be somebody with 200 followers. It doesn't matter. I want to talk to people. That's me kind of pounding the pavement. And, 10 people every single day is 3,600 plus people a year. I don't do public math. And that adds up. And also what I've noticed, there was a question in Reddit, can't remember exactly what it was, in the Reddit personal training forums, of which I am quite active now, Amber.
It's disturbing.
The first time, so for anybody who doesn't know the story, the first time that I joined Reddit, this is like 3 years ago, Amber was like, yeah, you should join Reddit. There's like a good personal training community. I feel like you could add a lot of value there or whatever. And so I joined it, and I was like, somebody mentioned my book, and somebody else was like, yeah, that book was great. And I went in and like thanked them for it. And this guy just started just blasting with vulgarities
It's so great.
It didn't even make sense. I was like, thanking you for like the same person who said this book is great. I thanked them for saying my book was great. And they just like words that you should never hear. And it was
so
like,
great.
God, this is,
I immediately took a screenshot of that conversation and sent it into my working moms group. I'm like, I sent my boss into Reddit, and this is what happened. This is the best day of my life.
Oh my God. And so there was one, which was the other day. It was like, oh, do you have any good stories about a client of yours, like referring other clients and like how that happened? And I was like, yeah. One woman who was 67 years old, arthritic fingers, 2 knee replacements, came into the gym. I had her do a deadlift. Now I didn't have her deadlifting. I taught her the deadlift movement with a broomstick, and we called it broom bum. And that woman, 5 years later, was now deadlifting 115 pounds, and we still called it the broom bum. That woman referred to me her husband, her 2 best friends, and her daughter. Her daughter referred to me her daughter's best friend and her daughter's husband. Her daughter's husband referred to me his 3 best friends. They made up 50% of my clientele. They were worth hundreds of thousands of dollars in training revenues over those 5 years. And a lot of it was because it was like, okay, well, we're going to call this the broom bum. Like, what's a little bit different about you? But I share this story because you don't need a lot of people in a neighborhood. You need to just get some inlays in that neighborhood and take care of people and build relationships. And you will be amazed at how much everything is connected in these tight-knit communities versus the internet, where you don't have that connection. So you need to kind of get every client in isolation. And so to Amber's point, yeah, you might walk around and knock on doors and get a whole bunch of no's or not hear people or whatever. And then the next time you go, there might only be one person. Don't get down on yourself, because all you got to do is just get some inlay into a community. And I can tell you right now that nobody else is doing this. Mm-hmm. Everybody else is trying to point at words in space on TikTok. Nobody else is actually going. Nobody else is actually going and knocking on doors in a neighborhood and being like, yo, I was in the neighborhood. I'm in between clients. Can I give you like a 15-minute stretch or yoga or whatever? Right now, would you want to set a time to? Everybody is trying to win the internet and ignoring their own communities or the communities around them. You don't need to demonstrate a squat really poorly online to get clients. Like trending music doesn't make a fucking difference. I'm sorry. And this Bolton Foods was a perfect example of that. This dude, I have no idea whether he actually was making a delivery in the neighborhood or whether he was smart enough to be like, yo, that's a rich neighborhood. Right. I'm going to park my car there and say hi to anybody I see and try to sell some of this meat.
Yeah. Oh, look, meat out of a truck is sus, though. I'm just gonna say.
No, this was like a legit.
Okay,
like,
see, ours truck. We have a truck that does that, but it's like a 1999 like Ranger,
No, this is like legit
with a cooler in the back.
But I mean, think about
Welcome
this.
To the South.
Yeah, I would have never in a million years, I would have never bought from this company. Mm-hmm. Even if they existed, even if they openly marketed to me somewhere where I was present at like a neighborhood fair or They sent ads to me. I don't even know if they have an Instagram account. Like I've never checked. It is so completely irrelevant. We donate to the Sick Kids Hospital every single month. Is it because I'm like super passionate about like the Toronto Sick Kids Hospital? No, it's because one time somebody came and knocked on our door and said, would you like to make a small recurring monthly donation to the Sick Kids Hospital? And Allison said yes. And for like 5 years, I think $5 comes out of our account every month and goes to the Sick Kids Hospital. Allison had cancer last year. We don't donate to the cancer hospital because nobody's knocked on our door.
Right.
This is why, like, when students come to us and when Ren and I do coaching calls with students, one of the very first things when there's like, oh, look, I'm not getting any clients, you don't know what's going on. One of the very first questions we ask is, did you talk to anybody today? How many? And did you like steer the conversation towards training, or did you have a genuine human conversation? And that's usually the very first thing we ask. And if it was nobody, get off the call, go talk to some people, like that's the default,
Like,
it's so humans engage in such anti-human behavior when they get involved in the sales process. Right. Like, it's like all the humanity it leaks right out of their brain. And I had this conversation yesterday, and I'll be quick, John. I know you got something you want to get to, but I had a conversation with a guy yesterday. I said, I did a social media audit, and I said, hey, I'm noticing that people are commenting on your posts, and you're just giving a like you're not replying to the comments.
That kills me.
He's like, yeah, I never really thought about it. I was like, okay, here's the scenario. I walk up to you on the street somewhere. I'm like, hey, it's Carson, my best bud from high school. Hey, dude, this bro Carson, man, he could jump out of the gym, man. This guy used to dunk like crazy. He's amazing. And you look at me and you give me a thumbs up and you walk off. How fucking weird would that be? This is what you're doing on the internet. Where's your humanity, bro? Somebody said something to you and you did this. Thumbs up. Right? You just talk back. Let's start there.
Can we do a skit, Ren? Can we do a skit of this?
Yes, it needs to be a skit.
We need to do that.
I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it for my own benefit.
You're better.
For my own business. Yeah. I'm going to do it for my own business benefit so that in no way it helps PTDC or any of its affiliates. I'm sorry, Jonathan, you were going to say?
Philippines.
Yeah. I'm serving myself here. It's a self-serve line. I'm sorry, Jonathan. I got
Somebody came to me a few months ago and asked me how to get more clients. He said, hey, how can I increase my Instagram following so I can get more clients? And I looked at his Instagram following, and he had 2,500 and change followers. And I said, how many clients do you have? And he said, 3. And I said, how many clients do you think you need? And he said, oh, if I had 10, that'd be amazing. So, okay, you have 3 clients, you need 10. You have 2,563 followers. Do you really think getting another 2,000 followers is going to solve your problem?
Right.
Or, and here's the challenging question, do you think the problem is that what you're doing is not communicating the value that you need to be able to communicate so that anybody who's here wants to train with you? Or you're not asking enough, or you're not having enough conversations. The problem is not a numbers problem, but we look at the numbers all of the time. Mm-hmm. We see that number going up or not going up, or maybe even going down. That's scary, right? Oh my God, somebody stopped following me. I had 2,563. Now I have 2,561. My life is going to end. Well, the reality of it is 200 people who care deeply about what you do, who are deeply embedded in what you do, is way more valuable than 2,053. Yes. May I remind you, sir, all you need is 10 fucking customers.
That's not even 10% of your following.
Do the math. Yeah. What's 3 divided by 2,563? What's that conversion rate right now? And so what problem are you solving? I think what it comes down to is this. Let me know, Amber.
0.00111705.
There you go. So you have a 0.001 conversion rate. And so I guess what it comes down to here, and this is where I'll kind of try to wrap this around, is we seem to be very good, and this is a big mistake, at trying to figure out a solution before we actually identify the problem. What I have found is that once you actually figure out the problem, the solutions are relatively easy to come by. But the problem is hard to really define. The problem is nobody is willing to pay me for my training, or I can't get people to listen to me about my training, or I don't have people who think that I'm unique enough or I don't stand out enough in order to get, and I need people who are willing and able to pay me an amount that's fair, that will allow me to have the right kind of life as well and be able to continue to serve people. I need to find the people who will do that, right? Which basically means you need rich people. And rich is like, if you make $100,000 a year, you're in like the top 1%. Like, so you need rich people. And so we talked about this in the neighborhood, like Bolton Foods. Again, I have no idea whether they were actually making delivery or not, or whether they were just like, this is a rich neighborhood. We sell expensive meat. Why don't we just like park a van in a rich neighborhood, pretend like we're making a delivery, and go talk to rich people who are probably the type of people who are going to buy expensive meat. And then we're going to sell some of this meat. And by the way, their marketing and advertising costs are $0.
Right.
Why don't we just do that? Because they worked backwards from the problem, right? Our problem is we sell expensive meats. We want to sell this meat at a high margin, which means we want as few middlemen and middlewomen as possible, which means we don't want to sell through stores. And so we can either advertise, but there's a big cost to that, and how are we going to stand apart, and why us, and how do we actually like talk to people about what they want? Because he had like 15 cuts of beef. Like, how are you ever going to have that conversation with somebody? Whereas with me, he can say, oh, what kind of, how do you eat your steak? Like what kind of stuff do you like? And then he could be like, oh, this one's the right one for you. You can't really do that online. So he worked backwards from the problem. Okay, I'm going to go where there's wealthy people who hang out during the day. I'm going to park my van. It's going to cost me $0, and I'm going to talk to whoever's around. Because he worked backwards from that problem. And then the solution was actually quite logical and easy. I mean, if what we're talking about sounds obvious, it's because it is. If you want wealthy people who have time to work out in the middle of the day, you go to a place where there are wealthy people who have time to work out in the middle of the day, and you go have a conversation with them.
Right.
That's what you do. And okay, I want to talk to you about I Am Tour Guide. Can we talk about that?
Sure. I guess so.
That's one of my favorite stories. Well, it's one of my favorite stories. The meat story is a good story.
That's a good story.
I was in the Philippines.
Of course.
It's always a good way to start a story.
Yeah.
It's one time in the Philippines.
A couple nights before this, at 2 a.m., walking home drunk, at the end of the night, a prostitute forcefully pulled my hand onto her penis. So that's another story. But
now that's one of my favorite stories.
Mm-hmm. And what do you do at that point? Because oftentimes when there's a prostitute around, it means that there's a pimp around, and a pimp don't take no shit from nobody. And so you can't fight the prostitute, and also she was strong because she was a he, and right. There was a lot of things going on in my head. And keep in mind, I was extremely inebriated at 2 a.m. in a very foreign country with my hand on this woman's penis. There was a lot going on that I wasn't quite sure what to do. So a few days after that, on the other side of Boracay, there were these caves that we wanted. I was with my cousin, and she was teaching in Korea at the time. And so I said, whenever you have a break, I'll go meet you and we'll go on a holiday somewhere. So she had a break teaching in Korea, and then I met her in Manila, and we went and spent some time in Manila, went up to Boracay. And so we're on Boracay, and we wanted to go check out these caves. So we took a tuk-tuk to the caves, right? And as we're a tuk-tuk, a little, it's whatever. You Americans got to get out enough.
That's what the prostitute had, a tuk-tuk.
No, a tuk-tuk is it's a vehicle. It's like a little taxi type vehicle. Right?
Gotcha. All right, go ahead.
Yeah.
Please continue. Amber's happy.
So we go. So I'm in this tuk-tuk with this driver with my cousin, and all of a sudden you hear this motorcycle, and we're in the middle of nowhere, right? We're going to these caves. There's nobody else at these caves. They're these back caves. And all of a sudden, this motorcycle like revs up, like vroom, like ahead of us, right? And the tuk-tuk driver says, "Oh, okay, you talk to him when we get there." And so we're like, oh, shit, we got to give somebody like a bribe. This is just like how this shit works. Like when you got to go traveling with me at some point, like you will figure out that this is not uncommon.
Oh my god!
So we go. So we get to these bat caves, right? Of course, we're the only people there, and there's kind of like this entrance down to this cave, and there's this kid. He could not have been more than 12, waiting for us at the cave, and he looks at us and he goes, "I am tour guide." And I said, "I'm John. Nice to meet you."
You got a Batcave tour from Groot from
Guardians
of the Galaxy.
My cousin said, "I'm Kaylee. Nice to meet you." And he said, "I am tour guide." I said,
"I am Groot."
And he says, he has a piece of paper of how much the tour costs.
Oh.
And he was not a tour guide, but what he had done was he had printed a piece of paper that said official tour guide. And he had it laminated.
Oh, that's
and he showed us a laminated piece of paper
that's legit.
that said official tour guide. Now, what a tuk-tuk driver who spoke a little bit more English told us was basically we would get the living shit kicked out of us if we didn't pay this kid by his dad who was around the corner.
Right.
And so we paid the kid to take us down, which was a really good idea actually, because the cave was, of course, pitch black, and we went down into it, and it was wet and slippery and whatever it was. And this kid's hopping bare feet. We're like, right? And so we get down into the cave, and the bats are really wild up top. There's tons of bats. And all of a sudden, this kid, the tour guide, I'm going to call him Miguel for no reason. And so Miguel just, and so.
It's not even the right
not a Filipino name. Miguel. I was a Spanish kid in the Philippines, John. I don't understand this. Oh my god! Go ahead, sir.
So Miguel's taking us down these rocks barefoot, and he's leaping side to side to side to side, and he goes, "Oh, don't step there, snake."
What?
And we go, what? We didn't see the snake, and all of a sudden he shines his flashlight down at the snake, and we look at it, and we go, "Is it poisonous?" He's like, yes, very, very poisonous. This kid's bare feet, right? Like my cousin's wearing sandals, she's hungover as all hell. I'm not as hungover, but I'm wearing running shoes. And so we're down in the cave, and there's a snake. And then, and so it was good that he took us down into the cave, or else we might have stepped and gotten bitten by this snake, this white snake. And of course we get out of the cave, and we paid the tour guide, Miguel, and we go back to the thing, and I look up this snake, and this is the second most venomous, poisonous, and most dangerous snakes in the world.
Oh my god!
That was just at the bottom of this thing. And so I tell you the story about the snake because it's just a funny story. But the other part of it is how think about Miguel and his sign that said official tour guide laminated, and think about that with you. He showed up with so much confidence and bravado that you couldn't debate him. Dude's got a shit laminated. You don't laminate things unless they're official.
Yeah,
he also had someone to kick your butt in case you didn't.
Well, we didn't quite know that,
there.
Right? But think about it. It's if Miguel showed up and he was just like, "Hey, what's up? You got to pay me to take you down." We'd be like, "Get away from here, kid!" Right?
Yeah.
But he showed this laminated piece of paper, and we were stuck because we were like, "Oh, is this official? Is this not official?" He's very confident. It says official. I'm pretty sure this is bullshit because we're on this tiny island in the middle of nowhere and there's nobody around. So I'm pretty sure this is official. But look at that piece of paper. Are we going to get into trouble? Right. And what happens though when you show up confidently with the trappings of being confident, dressed like you belong, using professional software like you belong, is that people believe you, take more action, and trust you way more than they otherwise would. And then you help them not step on a venomous snake that would probably kill you because you're quite literally in the middle of it. We would have died.
Yeah.
If that snake bit us.
I'm gonna personally rescind the offer to travel with you ever, Jonathan. Let me just put that out there. I don't know if you know any other black people besides me, but you lost me at penis. I made a hard decision, a hard no for me at bats.
Can I tell you another story about a friend of mine that's a black guy that I traveled with?
And I made a lifetime decision at venomous snake.
Tico Reindorf. Who
are you making these names up, Jonathan?
No, he's a real person. He's a great guy. So
okay.
Tico,
all right.
I did the Mighty Trainer comic with him. If you remember, when I ran this web comic called Mighty Trainer, and he was the artist, and he's like 250, 270 pound, like black guy. He was in the fitness industry, so like big dude, and he would draw when we did this web comic. He would draw this comic, and it was amazing to watch because his hands were like lunch pails, right? But I'd be sitting, and he'd have these like tiny like drawing pencils. I'd be like, you got a little like Korean kid in there? Like, what is going on, right? And so this guy is so he came to Thailand. He came to visit me in Thailand because we were working on some other stuff that never came to fruition. But he came to Thailand with us. And to get to where I lived in Thailand, it was an island called Koh Phangan. You basically had to fly like Toronto to somewhere else, usually like Tokyo or Seoul or something like that, and then to Bangkok, and then Bangkok to Suratanu, which is like a secondary airport, and then take a boat. So it was like a 30-hour trip to get here. And so we get to this pier in Suratani, and we're waiting for the boat to take us across the water to Koh Phangan. And we're at the pier. And there's not a lot of black people around.
It's shocker.
Right. And there is certainly not a lot of black people around that look like Tico.
Right. He's an anomaly.
And so people started to want to take pictures with him.
Right.
One of the workers, and so people would like pose for like pictures with him, right? And one of the workers of the boats, I'll never forget. It was one of the funniest things I've ever seen. One of the workers with the boat wanted to take a picture with him, so Tico like goes to, and didn't like speak any English, so Tico goes to whatever, take the picture. He's like, at this point, it's just so tired from the trip. He's like, whatever, just take a picture. Like, I don't care, right? And this kid, like Thai kid, goes to take a picture, but motions for Tico to sit down. And then Tico's like, whatever, I'll sit down. Like, so you'll be the same height as me in the picture. And then this kid goes to sit down on his lap, but doesn't like sit on his knee, like pushes Tico's legs like together so he can sit in the middle of his lap.
Oh, no.
And goes to just take the picture of it. So yeah, you probably don't want to travel with me.
No, absolutely.
I found the Mighty Trainer comic though.
Oh, did you find it?
What do you mean?
I think so. There's an old Facebook page of Mighty Trainer, and there's actually a mention of it on Reddit as well.
Yeah, I mean, it did like tens of thousands, not hundreds of thousands of views. Some of the comics and stuff like that we did, we see like some of the drawings that we did. We still see all over the place. I actually have a book that I've been working on, a fiction book that I've been working on based off of a lot of the characters from that comic. And I'm about 15,000, 20,000 words in. Nice. So about like 7,500 pages in on this book. And it's hilarious. It's just like this irreverent parable with all of these caricatures of the fitness industry. Like the book starts with this guy who stows away in a shipping container running away from home in Italy and gets stuck in the shipping container that's 6 feet tall and 6 feet wide.
It's a weird version of Life of Pi.
and
right.
And has like doesn't know where it's going. It ends up it's going to America, but doesn't know where it's going. And to pass the time, he just did push-ups all day. He didn't figure out that he could stand up, so he just did push-ups. And by the time he got out of that shipping container at the other side of it, his body was so like morphed that he just had this massive internal rotation, this huge upper body, this huge chest, and no legs. He had like twig legs. and he lost the capacity to speak. He could just grunt. And and so they nicknamed him Brorilla and made him demonstrate and just do push-ups.
It's like a circus act. That's
Well, and then so he was discovered by Jay Armadillo, who's the bad big box gym owner who in his previous life ran an illegal, who illegally ran a boxing ring, an illegal boxing ring. Beforehand, and he needed a sideshow, so he found Brorilla to do push-ups and like grunt for like this illegal boxing match. That was how, and then he opened up the gym. He ended up opening up the gym that he opened up, Armadillo's gym, as a way to launder money from his illegal boxing ring. Because gyms are actually a great way to launder money, and because you could just like hire personal trainers and like pretend that they're working and launder money through them and launder money through equipment and then take loans against the equipment and do it. If you understand how laundering money works, gyms are actually a great way to launder money. And then what he realized very quickly was that you can actually make more money ripping people off with like illegal contracts and stuff like that in gyms than you can with illegal boxing rings. So then he did that. And then what he realized is that, well, you can actually make even more money by starting a personal training certification and forcing all of your trainers to buy your own certification for your gym and all your education in order to work for you. And then the thing just spirals out. So this is part of the story that I'm writing.
So is this based on a true story or?
There's inspiration.
John, again, thank you so much for listening. If you're looking for another episode to listen to right now, I'm going to recommend you check out episode 69. It is called Business Lessons from a Hippie and Ex-Monk. The idea with this one is that it kind of flies in the face of conventional wisdom of like how to run your business. And it's a whole bunch of lessons that I've learned from spiritual people, but spiritual people who are also interested in money. You know, the two don't have to butt heads about how to build the right business for me. So I share about a lot of the stuff, but how my business works and stuff where I've gone wrong over the years as well. And I hope that you pick up a couple things to help you run a better business and design a better business for you, for your family's life. Not necessarily the biggest thing possible, but definitely big enough. Anyway, so that's episode 69. I recommend you check it out. It's called Business Lessons from a Hippie and Ex-Monk. Hope you're doing good. Have a good day.